Recording in
okay, so today, as always in these shiurim, we're going to discuss less content and more of the framework and the structure in order that to help or create a better understanding and when you go to the service itself. And today our focus will be Kriat HaTorah, the Torah reading. So just to open up, I'd like to let's ask an open question. How many times a week do we read from the Torah?
Three.
Okay, we have three. Any other answers?
Twice.
Sorry, twice. Okay, we have two. We have three. So the proper the answer is that we actually read from the Torah 4 times a week. And I was expecting you to say one. So you said two and you said three. So that's we're used to having one reading, and by the end of the shiur, you're going to understand why I say 4. But the answer to say one would also be correct, because we have a full Torah reading once a week, but then we have some other readings that we will explain. So yeah, we have in the comments here, the Shema is part of the Torah. That is correct. We have different parts, especially the Shema that comes from the Torah. That is not a Torah reading per se, but that is correct, Daniel, that the Shema is also part of the Torah. But when I say, but soon we'll understand. So basically, let's go back to the beginning of the tradition of reading the Torah. And reading the Torah is one of the oldest traditions that we know, per se, of that in the Jewish tradition. In other words, we have different traditions that develop over time. We have the mitzvot that are obvious. I mean, if it's putting on tefillin, or reading the Shema, or building a sukkah, or blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, or obviously those are set already in the Torah itself. But what I mean by an old tradition is something which is a tradition and not a mitzvah, but which has been kept by the Jewish people. There's a passage in the Torah which says that Am Yisrael were walking through the desert, and they went through the desert for 3 days and did not find water. And then they got very distressed, and they started complaining to Moshe. And you can imagine, with young kids, I mean, it's not only about having emunah. You have kids who are yelling and crying, and we don't have what to drink, and you're in the middle of the desert and it's hot. So they start complaining about not finding water. But we're taught that that the meaning of this, or the spiritual meaning of this, is that we know that the Torah is compared to water. In other words, that the Torah itself is the source of our spirituality and the source of our thirst. In other words, if we're thirsty, then what quenches our thirst, our spiritual thirst, is the Torah itself. So there's a double meaning in this, in that they went through and they were not learning Torah. So they missed out on the Torah for 3 days, and their soul couldn't bear the fact that they didn't have, that they weren't learning the Torah. So it was set as a tradition already then that 3 days will not go past without reading from the Torah. So this is what sets it as an old, very old tradition, and we'll explain the meaning of that. What do you mean by every 3 days? And then when the Jewish people came back from the Babylonian exile, so Ezra, who is the spiritual leader at the time, he set an additional reading, which was on Shabbat afternoon during Mincha, and we will explain that as well. So going back to the tradition, so we know that we're reading from the Torah at different points. We have different types of readings as well. We have the Parashat HaShavua. Parashat HaShavua is the reading of the portion of the week. And then we have the portions that we read during the holidays and during the festivals. In other words, we won't read the portion of the week. Rather, we will read something specific which talks about the specific holiday that we're celebrating that day. For example, on Rosh Hashanah, so we have something where the Torah talks about the mitzvot of Rosh Hashanah, and we will also have the mention of the Musaf, of the offering of the Musaf that we already talked about. So we will read that as well. So all of the Chagim, all of the festivals from the Torah, in other words, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Pesach, and Shavuot, all of those have readings that we will read from the Torah according to that Yom Tov, according to that Chag, according to that festival. Okay, so we have different types of reading. What about the portion of the week itself? And if I'm going too fast, just raise your hand and let me know. The portion of the week itself is split up nowadays so that we split up the Torah reading so that we finish the reading once a year. This was not always the case either. There were different minhagim, there were different customs. There was a custom that they used to read it every 3 years. In other words, that the cycle would take them 3 years to go through so that there was more time to learn each part. And then there was another a custom that was set in Babylon, in which they were actually finishing once a year. And this is a custom that is followed throughout the Jewish world today. In other words, most people won't even remember that there used to be a custom to read it every 3 years. To everyone, it's obvious that we finish the Torah reading once a year. When do we finish it? We finish it on the last day following Sukkot, which is Simchat Torah. The name of this is the rejoicing over the Torah, because this is the day that we finish the Torah reading. The Torah itself obviously has 5 books, and we will go through each of another name for them is the Chumashim. Chumash means a fifth. In other words, the 5 Chumashim are the 5 parts of the Torah, or the 5 books of Moses, as they are called. And we will go through from the beginning. In other words, the first, on Simchat Torah, we will finish and then begin again. So the beginning of the Torah is Bereshit. And then the end of the Torah, the last portion, is the last portion of Devarim, of the last section, the 5th book of Moses. And the last portion is Vizot HaBracha. The beginning of the Torah begins with the creation of the world. The end of the Torah ends with the passing of Moshe and him passing the torch on to Yehoshua, just as the Jewish people, as the Israelites are about to enter the Holy Land. So we're talking about basically from the beginning of creation through the description of the first generations from Adam until Noah, from Noah till Abraham, and then afterwards from Abraham onwards, it becomes the story of the Jewish people, and from there until Moshe passes on. So this is what we are going through throughout the year. So, for example, now we are in middle of the 4th book. Why? Because we have the summer ahead of us. Once we finish the summer, it will be coming close to Rosh Hashanah. From there, we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. As we said, we'll have different readings, and then it will end up in Simchat Torah when we finish the Torah reading. The calculation that is done in advance according to the amount of Shabbatot that we have every year. Because if, for example, we have a holiday that comes out on Shabbat, so we're going to have one parasha, we're going to have one portion less, because we're going to be reading the portion of the holiday instead of the Shabbat. So there's a regular calculation that is already set. You can find it on the internet, and you can already see 25 years ahead what parasha will be read on which day, because it's a set calendar. So you don't have to get involved in the calendar itself for what it is, just to realize that we're going through the portions based on the average. I think it's 52 Shabbatot a year that we will be reading the portion of the week. So the portion of the week is the main reading that we will read. And when will it be read? It will be read on Shabbat morning. When on Shabbat morning? After the Shacharit, after the Amidah, after the silent prayer, and then the repetition of the Chazan, of the cantor. Then we will open the Ark, and we will get into that in a second. We will open the Ark and take out the Torah and read from the main section. That is the main reading of the week. We have, as I said, another 3 readings. What do we have? What are the other readings? The other readings, as we said, so we don't go 3 days without reading from the Torah. And another reason given is the fact that on Mondays and Thursdays were the days of the shuk, the days that the farmers would bring their produce to the city. If you think of the fact that people lived out in farms, think of people living out in big farms in isolation. There are plenty today living in the same way in Scandinavia. So you come twice a week with your produce into town to sell your produce. So that's an opportunity also for these people to learn and to hear the Torah reading. Maybe they might not even be there on Shabbat because they can't come in. So, and they don't have a minyan where they live. So basically this day of the shuk, the day of the farmer's produce, the market, was the day also on Mondays and on Thursdays. So having that background, so what will we do on Mondays and Thursdays? We'll read just the first portion of the Parashat HaShavua, or the portion of the week of the following week. In other words, tomorrow morning, we will just read the first part of what we're going to read next Shabbat. When do we read this? We're going to read this on Monday morning. We're going to read it on Thursday morning. And also, as I mentioned before, Ezra added another reading on Shabbat afternoon. So we will read this first portion of the week 3 times. We're going to read it on Shabbat afternoon during Mincha, just a very short reading. We're going to read it on Monday morning. We're going to read it on Thursday morning. And then we're going to read the full portion on Shabbat morning itself. The portion of the week itself, so that's just a very short portion. The portion of the week itself, we said we're splitting up 52, the entire Torah into 52, so we have a full cycle once a year. The portion of the week itself will be split into 7 different parts. In other words, we're going to call up to the Torah reading 7 different people who are going to make the blessing over the Torah that we will get into in just a second. Before we do so, let's just talk a little bit about the taking the Torah out. In a sense, we won't go into the whole idea of the Beit Knesset, of the synagogue, but the synagogue has elements itself which remind us of the temple. In the temple itself, in the Beit HaMikdash, the holiest of the holy, where no one was allowed to enter, it was called Kodesh HaKodeshim, the holiest of the holiest, which only the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, could enter on Yom Kippur itself, in a life and death scenario, because if he was not completely pure and Am Yisrael were not ready to be forgiven for their sins, he would die on the spot. So this was a very serious issue of entering the holy, and the respect that was there was so deep that as soon as he entered, the entire Jewish people would fall on their faces saying God's name, listening to God's name and saying, "Blessed is God, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam V'ed." I mention this now because this is, in that sense, we have a little bit of that respect of the Holy of Holies being the Torah that we have, that we should have when we take out the Torah itself. The Holy Ark is not just opened regularly. We don't open it up if we don't have a minyan. We don't open it just because, it's a huge respect that we have for the Torah scroll written on parchment, God's words written and passed down. When we open up the Torah, the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, obviously everyone will stand out of respect. And then if you follow in your Siddur, you will find that there's a special prayer that we say when we are opening the Ark. So if you open your Siddurim to Shabbat, if you just open to the Shabbat service, Shabbat morning service, and again, I can open it just here for those who do not have a Siddur. Cecilia, you didn't bring your Siddur. Okay, I will share the screen here for those who have not found it. So just after we finish the Amidah of Shabbat, the cantor will say the Kaddish, and then immediately afterwards, the Chazan will go up, the cantor will go up and open up the Holy Ark. And then we have psukim, we have a collection of psukim which express the awe and the fact that God is King of the world. So this is said when we open up the Ark. And then the psukim following these, the passages that we say afterwards are actually taken from the Torah, in which it describes that how what Moshe would say as the Aron HaKodesh, as the actual in the desert when they were carrying the Aron, when they were carrying the casket that had in it the Luchot HaBrit, the tabernacles inside of them. So Moshe says these psukim. Moshe says, "Rise, eternal, and your enemies will disperse, and your foes will put to flight from before you. For the Torah will come forth from Zion, and the word from eternal of the eternal from Jerusalem. Blessed is the one who gave Torah to the people of Israel in holiness." So this we will say as we open the Aron. Many times there's a common melody that in the Ashkenazi communities that we will sing when we open the Aron Kodesh. Vayhi b'ntzah Aaron vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzeh Torah כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל, בקדושתו. So this is Ashkenazi tune. It follows the Ashkenazi tradition of if there's any musician here, it can give us some of the background of that as well, of German music and connection perhaps to the larger culture of classical music, but that's not the purpose of this shiur. But anyway, we have these psukim that we will say, obviously, and it will sound very different if you go to a Sfaradi, if you go to, in Jerusalem, to a Moroccan synagogue, they won't be singing Germanic music. But here, it's giving a sense of the respect that we have, and then following that, we have there's a prayer that we say in Aramaic, and if anyone here thought that following the Hebrew and the Siddur is difficult, I would say that the Aramaic is even more difficult. Just listen to the words here. if anyone understood anything there. Again, this is a prayer that we are praying actually for both for Torah and for our community. This is a prayer from the Babylonian exile, which is why it was written in Aramaic. So anyway, all of that is sort of an introduction that we're saying when the ark is open, and then the Chazan, usually someone will be given the honor of opening the ark together with the Chazan, and he will pass the Torah to the Chazan, and the Chazan, the cantor, will then, obviously, when we're holding the Torah in this respectful moment, we will say the Shema Yisrael. So again, I'm just going to use the Ashkenazi tunes that we're used to in our services. So he will say out loud, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And everyone will say after him the Shema Yisrael. This is a moment of all of us coming together in belief as he's holding the Torah. Then following that, Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. One is our God, the great. Our God is the greatest, and his name is respected in holiness. And then the Chazan will say, come with me and may we respect God together. We will uplift his gratefulness together. And then he will take the Torah scroll and walk down towards the congregation and walk through the congregation. There are different customs if he goes directly to the Bima, which is where the Torah is being read, or whether he takes it down towards the congregation, and then there's an opportunity for the congregation to come up and kiss the Torah scroll together. I will mention that in our Beit Knesset, in our synagogue, I've tried to add another custom, and then I invite the women to also, I go towards the back, and the women are welcome to come and kiss the Torah as well. There's no reason for, women in general, we can have a large discussion about that, but the Torah was given to all of us, and we should all be able to respect the Torah. So I bring it down, and then the women have an opportunity to kiss the Torah as well. That's just a side note. So anyway, with all of this, this is like becomes a central part of the prayer on the Shabbat. Then the Torah scroll is opened up, and we will begin the reading of the Torah itself. Any questions till now before we go into everything?
Sorry, Moshe, for my question. But what if the woman is in Nida? Is she also allowed to kiss the Torah, or is it like some specific halakha to that? Or
yes, the Mishnah says specifically that the Torah scroll cannot become impure. Okay, so there's no issue for whatsoever for men or for women in any state to kiss the Torah. It's actually, your question has been raised that people have a misconception about that, but it's the Mishnah says very clearly that there's no issue about that. Okay.
Okay, so Torah.
Okay, so the Torah reading itself, again, going back to the question from the beginning of the shiur.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but like, where does it say in the Mishnah that you cannot make the Torah? Just so I can name drop and pretend to be smart at another time. Where does it say in the Mishnah that the Torah cannot get unholy?
So I can't hear you clearly. Can you?
Sorry, where in the Mishnah does it say that the Torah, you cannot make the Torah unclean? Where does it say that?
It says it. I will find the quote for you. I don't remember the exact place right now, but I can send it to you in the shiur as well if you want. I am sorry, I don't. I remember the Mishnah and the words, but I don't remember the exact place, so I'll find it for you.
Thank you.
But anyway, the Torah reading itself, again, I think as the Torah is so essential to who we are, it's there's actually there's a halakha that we should be reading it every day of the week in preparation for the Shabbat reading, so that the Shabbat is actually the second reading that we have, because because it's throughout the week, we can actually split up our week and then take a few minutes a day to read the portion so that we're ready for it, because if we just show up there and we haven't read it ourselves, we'll find difficulty, I think, following. But anyway, the Torah reading, at least in our Bet Knesset in Malmö, I try to give a short explanation what we're going to be reading about. And the Torah reading is split into 7, as we said before, 7 aliyot. Alot means to go up. 7 people are called up according to order. The first person called up is always the Kohen. If there is a Kohen, the priest from the priestly family. The second person called up will be the Levi from the Levite family. And then the rest will be Yisrael. In other words, not Kohanim and not Leviim, will be the following 5. So we follow in order. So there's usually a special person who's calling people up to the Torah, and he will call them up by their name and by their father's name. And then he will say, Yamod, this and this, HaKohen, or HaLevi. And then they will go up to the Torah itself and read from the Torah. About reading from the Torah, in the old tradition, people would read their portion. In other words, you're called up to the Torah and you're supposed to read what you have been called up. Nowadays, because many people don't have the knowledge and we don't want to embarrass people who don't know how to read from the Torah, so we will have someone there who will just read the entire Torah reading. So it doesn't have to be the rabbi or the cantor. It could be someone who has prepared the Torah reading. It can be a few different people who have prepared the Torah reading, because the Torah itself has no vowels and no and it doesn't have the melody inside. So it's a lot of preparation to read from the Torah. Even someone who knows the Torah, to know how to read it properly according to the tune that is and the melody that has been set. So nowadays, you will usually have someone who is reading the Torah and not the person. So the person who is going up to the Torah will actually just be making a blessing over the Torah. If you do have this book, The Concise Guide to Halacha, you will find the blessings on page 492 and 493. And it explains the brachot and what we say. So basically, we have a blessing. The person going up to the Torah will say, Baruchu et Adonai Vorach. Basically, blessed are you, the God. And then the congregation will answer, Baruch Adonai Vorach L'olam V'ed. And then he has another blessing. He says, blessed are you, God of the world, who has blessed us amongst all nations. In other words, made us distinct from nations, and given us the Torah, chosen us from all nations and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, the giver of the Torah. So this is the blessing that he says before. And then the blessing following afterwards will, after his reading, will be, if you have this in front of you, it's 494. Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu baruch ata Hashem noten Torah. So if you have, I'm just going through this quickly, but if you have the book or the PDF of the book, you can look after the shiur at pages 492 to 494, and it will give you an explanation of the brachot and what we say and when. So basically, you have 7 people going up to the Torah. The one person will, the person going up will say the bracha before, and then afterwards he will have his reading. So the entire reading will be split into 7. You have the Kohen, and then you have the Levi, and then you have Shlishi, Revi'i, Chamishi, Shishi. In other words, the 5th portion, 6th, etc., 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, etc. Once we finish the Torah reading, in other words, we've read 7 we've read the 7 portion. Then once we've read the 7 portions, then we have what is called the maftir. The maftir means the one who finalizes. You can say the one who finishes off. So the maftir will read the final section of the Torah again. Okay, so we said we have 7 sections, and then part of the last section will be repeated again. Why? Because the maftir will read the haftarah, and we'll discuss the haftarah in just 1 minute. After we finish the 7 plus 1, in other words, 7 and the maftir, we will raise the Torah. It's called hagba'ah, to raise the Torah, and you will also find it in the same pages that I just mentioned. We raise the Torah so that everyone will see it, and then everyone will stand up at this point and point at the Torah and say, this is a vizot habracha, this is the Torah that was blessed by Moshe and given to us by God. The Torah is then put down, rolled up again, and following that, we will read the haftarah. The haftarah itself is a final part which was added onto the Torah reading. Okay, there are different opinions as to when and why the haftarah was added. Whether it was added by Ezra himself, we talked about Ezra before, who was the spiritual leader when Am Yisrael came back, or whether it was added on later on when there was a decree in which the Jews were forbidden from learning Torah. So instead of the Torah reading, they took a portion from the prophets. Either way, the haftarah has been there for quite a while, and it's a portion of the prophets which is connected to the main or to one of the subjects which is discussed in Parashat HaShavua, in the portion of the week. So the haftarah itself is an additional part. It does not come from the 5 books of Moses. It comes from the Nevi'im or from the Ktuvim, from the prophets or from the writings, in other words, the other 2 parts of the Tanakh. The fact is that we have we have the regular portion of the Torah reading, but many times we don't have the opportunity to read from the rest of the Tanakh. So this is also an opportunity to learn from the other parts of the Tanakh, from the writings of the prophets from later on. And again, many times they are related to the subject matter or of the parasha itself. So just to summarize, we have the 7 aliyot, the people that go up to the Torah. We have the maftir, who will repeat the last part of the parasha. And then we have the raising of the Torah. The Torah is rolled up, and then we have the reading. The same person who has gone up for the 8th part for the maftir, he will read the haftarah out, which is from the prophets themselves. If you manage to follow me until now and you are not confused, so I'll just add a few more facts to make sure that you don't get this right. Basically, so we have 7 plus 1, which is the maftir. Okay, but now we have chagim, we have the festivals, and the festivals we will not have 7 who go up. We will have 5 who will go up, and then the maftir. So we have Kohen, Levi, Israel, and then we have another 2, and then we have the maftir. And then the haftarah will be obviously connected not to what to the Chag itself, to the Yom Tov itself. When do we not read the haftarah? We don't read the haftarah in the 3 other readings of the Torah. The haftarah is only read during the main portion of the Shabbat morning. But Shabbat afternoon is a very short reading, and Monday and Thursday are very short readings. What we do on the Shabbat afternoon mincha, and on Monday and on Thursday, we take the first part, the first portion out of the 7, and we split that one into 3. So we have the Kohen, Levi, and Israel are going up for a very short meeting. I'll say that again if it wasn't clear. We're going to take the first portion of what we're going to read the next week. And usually that is the part that the Kohen himself is reading. And that itself will be split into three. So we have the Kohen, the Levite, and the Israel. We're reading a very short portion. So it's literally a 5-minute reading on that Monday morning. And then we will not have the Haftarah. So the Haftarah we will have always in the morning on Shabbat. And we will have it on the Yom Tov and the festival in the morning as well, following the Torah reading, which is 5 instead of 7. We also have another time when we read the Torah is on fast days. When we have a fast day, such as not only Yom Kippur, but we have the other fast days that we have throughout the year. So during the fast days that we have, then we will read from the Torah. We will have the Torah reading. And in the afternoon, in the Mincha, actually, we will have the Haftarah, which is an awakening to tshuva, to repent, to go back to God. So we have, again, if this is too much for you now and too many details, then it's okay. But we also have the Torah reading on the fast days, because about repentfulness, about forgiving, about asking God for forgiveness. And then we will also have in the afternoon, actually, we'll have the Haftarah. So, for example, on upcoming in less than a month, we will have Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, which is a fast day. And then following that, we will have Tisha B'Av, which is a fast day. So on these fast days, we will have a special Torah reading, which is pertaining to the fasts, to the fast days. But we won't get into those details. So after we finish the Torah reading, we have finished the Haftarah. Then, just to continue a bit in the service itself, we usually have prayers that are prayers for the congregation. We have prayers for the king. We have prayers for the state of Israel. We have prayers for those who protect us. And following those prayers, which are like communal prayers, we take the Torah, take it back, and return the Torah scroll again, many times taken through the congregation, taken back to the Holy Ark. The same person who opened the Ark before will shut the Ark after the Torah has been returned. So now we've gone through the process of the Torah reading, from taking it out until we return it, and the framework of the Torah reading itself. So if you follow the portion of the week, if you have a Jewish calendar, a luach, then you will see that in the Shabbat itself, you will already find what will be the portion of the week next week. So I would suggest, if you could get used to the routine, that you take a few minutes every day to learn the first. In other words, we have 7 days a week. So if today on Sunday you were gonna, okay, what is the parasha next week? Let's open up to the Torah. Let's look at what will be the first portion that we're going to be reading, to read through it, even in a translation. And then by the time you come to Shabbat, you'll find yourself much more prepared for the Torah reading, for the meaning. You can also find in the Torah and online what will be the Haftarah next week. And it's always interesting to see the relationship between the Torah reading and the Haftarah itself. So we got, I think, quite a lot of framework and structure of how things are set, and again, I hope it's helpful. It's not to throw out too much at you at one time, just to give you the whole structure, break it down for yourself. And there's a few recordings from these shiurim that I have to manage to upload, because I'm not the one who uploads them, but I will try to get them uploaded, because they're right now stuck on my computer and I have to technically figure out how to get them